and Alice to introduce themselves. I might start with Shu.
Hi there, I'm Shu. Hi everyone. I'm also Josephine's business partner and working in with Christy. Hi, Louise, I can see you there. Nice to have you there.
Hi.
Hi.
Great. And we have Alice. So Alice, how are you going today? We just introducing ourselves, who we are, and you know, what we're doing currently in terms of the, you know, sort of, I guess, dealing with clients or teams or ourselves online at the moment. So if you want to just give a brief description of yourself.
Hi, I'm Alice. Now I work out of Higher Spaces, but at the moment I'm up in Shepparton through our Shepparton office, and I'm an accountant and a financial advisor, virtual financial controller. So yeah.
I love that. So you're really a virtual financial controller now.
Yeah,
That's
right.
Brilliant. All right, and great news. We're going to have Alice actually doing Lunch and Learn next week, and he's going to share all of the information about the kind of programs that are available to us for relief around COVID-19. And I have so many questions. There's a lot of information to keep in touch with and get connected with. So, and it moves. So, so we're looking forward to that, Alice, for next week. So thank you for that. All right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen in a minute, but what I'd like to do is just do a bit of a round robin, and if you could let me know what's the biggest problem that you're currently facing in terms of working well remotely. Like, what is it for you? If it was your #1 challenge, what is that? And I'll just open that up, just whoever wants to go first.
I think for me, it's definitely boundary setting. So not working extremely long hours. And then after I leave the study, being asked questions by my family. So having to go from work to family very quickly and back again. So boundaries for me is a big one.
Yeah, and flipping those environments too, by the sounds of it. Okay, yeah, great. Thanks, Beulah.
I'll go. I think for me, probably concentration, because I'm in a similar situation. My son's at home studying online, and he's coming down having lunch near the study, and you know, he might just wander past shortly. So just yeah, I guess being able to concentrate, focus on particular projects without being interrupted.
Yeah, great. Okay, but I will definitely give you some tips about that, and maybe some things you can work with your team as well, because that is a big one. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Any other? What's your biggest challenge?
Yeah. I mean, I've been working remotely for a while now, so it's not so much being concentration or anything like that. For me, at this time right now, we find it very hard because we normally go and see clients. So the biggest barrier at the moment for us is we can't go out and see a client at you know, while they're working, or I will very rarely meet a client in an office now because they're all over the place and we've changed the way we do business. But yeah, I think it's having that face-to-face connection and, you know, seeing what their problems are firsthand. Yeah, so that's the biggest issue we have at the moment, because this is when they need us the most. So.
And Alice, can you kind of describe what is that? What's the outcome of that? So you're not able to do the face-to-face. For you, what's the problem there? What's the outcome?
So you know, we're doing Zoom meetings and stuff like that, which is okay, but I feel like this is when they need us the most. So if they see us there, I think, you know, they'll see that support. But we're trying to compensate by, you know, Zoom meetings and trying to communicate with them as much as possible. So I think we've had phone calls from businesses that their financial advisors or accountants aren't communicating with them. So where they would normally meet them in the office, they can't meet them, so they're not doing anything. So
we're not doing anything,
yeah. So we have to do, we have to do these virtual meetings and
yeah. So Alice, can I describe that as perhaps you're thinking that it's more difficult to establish that connection, that real connection, and showing your caring kind of aspect when you're not doing the face-to-face?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, all right, great. All right, well, we'll cover some of that too. Shu and Christy and Louis?
My challenge is I feel like I need to connect more with people. Well, otherwise, I feel like it was not that important. But now, for me, it's a challenge because I need to set aside more time to do that. So it's eating into my time. But I find that it's necessary. So like when I'm working in with the teams at Telstra, I feel now we're doing more to connect. Like we're doing the 50 minutes every day to just say hello, but otherwise, ordinarily, we don't need to do that because we see each other all the time. Yeah. That's one challenge. And therefore, to your point there, Bula, that I don't have that boundary. Like, I don't know when to stop work. And I forget that I actually have to stop at 6 p.m. so I could cook dinner, and I forget that. Or sometimes I'm not sure why I'm still eating my lunch at my work desk when I have a dining table out there to eat my lunch,
That's right.
So that's kind of a bit of a challenge.
Okay, thank you. I think I've heard that from other people I've spoken to as well, that they're in meetings all the time now. It's meetings because social interaction has to happen more deliberately. Whereas when you think about it, when you just go past someone in a physical space like an office space or at your work, you might have a one phrase conversation, or you might smile at them and that's a way of connecting, or you might notice that something's not right, so you'll ask them a question, whereas we don't have that. We don't have that when we're working in isolation. So everything has to be deliberate. And you're right, it does have to be deliberate. Okay. But time is then a problem. Okay. And Christy and Lois?
Hi. So my case is a bit different because I have been working from home for a couple of years already. So my challenges is I think there is some lack of face-to-face connection is quite a challenge, because although I can have virtual meetings, online meetings with my colleagues, they are all over the world. Some of them are from Hong Kong, some of them are from Singapore, Vietnam, but still I think the lack of face-to-face connection is still a little bit of the issues for me. It seems like there is a barrier between us.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Lois. And Christy?
I think it's prioritizing my energy. I think I try to tackle the difficult things first, or the things that I don't want to do, but I end up sometimes procrastinating and doing the easy stuff, and then I don't get the other things done. So.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that's about prioritizing the work and feeling like you've had a productive day, which I think is sort of what Annabelle was saying too in terms of focus. So we want to kind of get to the end of the day and say, hey, this has been a good day. But what you're also all saying is that you want to do that and have a bit of balance in your life as well. And particularly now, I think it's really important because we're all dealing with an added layer of stress and anxiety, regardless of how you're feeling about things. There's this kind of, we are in a global situation, and we've never seen it before. And so the level of sort of, I guess, that layer is actually going to mean that we need to really take care of ourselves as well. Just a reminder, if you're not speaking, go on mute because there's a bit of background noise there. Okay. I actually, so I know Beulah works in employee support for people with sort of some of these issues. Beulah, can I just ask you, how are you managing that now that you've got, because your work would have been lots of face-to-face time, but also maybe some virtual time, but lots of face-to-face time when you're dealing with people who really need you, and kind of Alice has that same problem. How are you managing it in your business?
Well, everything's been transitioned to online support, except for maybe one or two customers where, so I work for an employee assistance program provider, so we offer a range of wellbeing supports for staff. Aside from critical incident support, for the most part, everything is online now. So that's been that huge change project that's occurred. It has its challenges in keeping, some of our customers too have huge increases in workload just in dealing with the current crisis, and people feeling isolated, disconnected, struggling to establish a work from home routine in the new world.
Yeah.
So working from home now is very, very different to working from home previously. Now we don't have a choice. Now it's every day. Now the family's at home as well.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are talking about how to manage those sorts of things with huge increases in their workload, dealing with that constant uncertainty of how is this actually going to play out? How am I going to support my family? What is it going to look like in a couple of months? What is it going to look like in a week? So organisationally, it is about us reinventing the way we deliver services. How can we maximise connection through, virtual options? And it works better depending on the organisation too. We have quite a range of different sorts of industries and sectors involved. So for some, with emergency services and all that, it can prove a little bit more challenging than perhaps some others which are more corporate based. So it's easier to work from home in those sorts of scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar, you're dealing with very similar challenges in a way that, and the people are kind of coming to you with similar challenges. Hi, I can see we've got Andrew joining. Hi, Andrew, how are you?
Good. I don't know if you can hear me, can you?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. So we were just going around and talking about our number one challenge, and I'll give you a little bit of a, just a summary, and then I'll ask you for your number one challenge, and then we'll go into maybe thinking about some solutions around that. So, so we were talking about things like boundary setting and being able to sort of have a work-life balance while we're working from home, and flipping from home, from working to sort of more of a home routine. And we were also talking about the challenge of productivity, being able to focus when there are lots, we're working from home, our children are working from home, there's lots of kind of distraction at home as well. We're also talking about the fact that because we're not having face-to-face meetings with clients and team, there's a bit of a lack of connection, and we're sort of struggling with how to kind of replicate that in a virtual environment. We were also talking about the fact that for some of us, we do that by having more deliberate kind of meetings, if you like. So the connection comes from establishing a meeting with someone online, and making sure that we're checking in, and we're checking in more. But that takes more time. I've heard that too. People are saying, I'm in meetings all the time. How am I going to get any work done? Because that social interaction is no longer asynchronous. Now we have to deliberately sequence the social interaction, whereas before we might have been able to go and visit someone, and Alice was talking about the fact you would have gone to visit your clients. Alice, when you go to visit your clients, you're probably saying hello to people in their workplace as well. So you're not just having one-on-one communication, you're having one-to-many communication. There's lots of non-verbal signals we're being able to pick up, whereas all of that is a little bit more difficult when you're kind of working in this virtual space. The other thing that was raised was just again around productivity, is about energy levels and prioritizing work, and how do you kind of stop yourself from just doing the easy stuff and the stuff you like to do every day, and not really tackling the stuff that really needs to get done every day. So productivity and maintaining levels of productivity, I think, is difficult. And then of course, we've been hearing from some of the people here about some of what they're doing in their work as well, and particularly around sort of issues of everyone's, there's been changes in workload. So, and actually in terms of workload, I think what we're facing is some people have faced a dramatic decrease in workload. They've either been stood down or their hours have been reduced. So some people are facing dramatic decrease in that. Other people have incredible uptake in workload where maybe, you know, so for example, they're part of an organization where they've stood down some people, but the rest of the people are left to pick up the workload. So that's a very real phenomena. Really, and then we have other challenges about establishing a new routine, about working from home when it's no longer a once in a while thing or a choice thing. It's actually we have to stay at home. And then we talked about the layer of uncertainty that everybody's feeling, obviously, because we're going through a global situation, and it's difficult to understand the future. And when that happens, that level of uncertainty can cause stress and anxiety. So Andrew, I'm just wondering, is there anything else there that you would add to that list? And perhaps if you could introduce yourself, because we've all introduced ourselves as well.
Yeah, I've been with Higher Spaces for, I don't know, probably since January. So I had my assistant Chloe working in the office there. She's at home, of course, the last 3 weeks or so. Looks like I'm a silhouette at the moment. I'm not looking at my picture on the screen, but it must be the light behind.
Yeah.
But I've got my little assistant here. You can see, I don't know if you can see him at all. Actually, I'm not.
No, we're sort of in the dark.
I sort of seem to be frozen at the moment. Anyway,
oh, you are.
You're frozen. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I just, because I pretty much do my own thing, and have Chloe helping with a lot of the background modelling and so forth, financials, etc. But the thing for me is, I've sort of been doing that for a while, so it's not that much different. You know, this situation not that much different for me. But the thing that is always, it's easy to get distracted if you're working from home, that's for sure. But you're probably more productive because you're not doing any travelling. So I was doing some work over in an office in Paran until moved across to Higher Spaces, and it's amazing that it takes you 45 minutes to drive from Abbotsford to Paran, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So it's an hour and a half, 3 days a week, and I worked out about $50,000 or $60,000 worth of productivity, you know, that I was losing in time spent, you know, on the road and so. So and I have been working from home for a while anyway. So my thing really is, it is easy to get distracted, but you just got to have lists of things to do, and if it's not absolute priority, you put it on the back burner. Everything that's priority, and you might have your list of maybe things, 5 or 6 things you have to do. Probably everybody's heard this before anyway. 5 or 6 things you have to do for the day. You get those done, and then the other things can follow. But if it's not absolutely urgent, you don't do it. And you know, that's sort of what I try and stick by.
Okay, that's great advice. And so what we were saying to Andrew is, I'm going to present a bit of information, and we're going to talk about some things that we can do, and please offer your suggestions, because this is a conversation, not really a presentation. So fabulous. So what I'll do now is I'm going to share my screen. I do have a little bit of content, but as I said, I'm going to kind of talk to the things that particularly you've kind of focused on. Actually, just responding to Andrew in terms of commuting, this was really brought home to me because I've worked with a global team. At the moment, I'm working for Orica, and I work with a global team, and we have people in the Philippines and in Indonesia, and they commute normally 2 hours every day to get to work and 2 hours every day to come back from work. So they actually have a full 4 hours a day back because they're not commuting. Can you imagine? So even if they were 30% more productive with that time, that's not bad. So I think that you know, I think that it's interesting how we do spend a lot of time getting to places. However, for some people, the getting to places is actually how we transition to being in a mode. So some of you were talking, like Beulah, I think you were talking about the fact that like you stop work and then you've got to go in the kitchen and then suddenly it's family time. Where's the transition for you? Because normally you'd leave your workplace, hop in the car perhaps, or public transport, and there's a process you go through. But how do we do that when we work from home? So are people doing any transition processes in their daily routine that they want to share just before we go on?
I'm happy to share some. For me, it's particularly difficult. The work I do can be fairly intense and high pressure. And coming out of that mindset and then being asked about the laundry or what we're going to have for dinner makes it really challenging, because somehow it's my decision sometimes. But what we've worked out is that when I've got a full day of back-to-back client meetings, I'm actually really grumpy at the end of the day with my family. And so what we're starting to do now is for me to actually go for a walk, and I don't necessarily have to take the dog. I can just go myself, and it becomes more of a mindfulness activity rather than a power walk. And so when I come back in, then I'm able to re-engage with the rest of the family and deal with whatever else is going on. So while I don't have that travel space anymore, creating different options of doing that. I work in my study, which is usually my haven, but I'm in here all the time now. So I have to get out. And another added issue is my family. We're the sort of family that communicates a lot, which is unfortunate in this circumstance because there's a lot of working that's happening and I need a lot of quiet. So finding alternative spaces within the house and sticking my sign on the door, do not disturb, and for them to understand that I need that time. So that's been a work in progress, and it's getting better.
Yeah, okay. And was that, did you kind of have to negotiate that, Beulah? Was that sort of something that came easily? What are the challenges to doing that?
My issue is about setting boundaries for myself. I'm really good with other people. So for me to actually say to them, don't come in and ask me things, for me, that was really difficult. For them, they wanted clear instructions from me about what was possible, what wasn't possible, and for those instructions to be consistent. Mind you, it took a little bit of training for them to get the hang of, if the door's closed, do not even talk to me. But that's what I needed to do for them to understand where the boundaries sat.
And it's kind of interesting that you say that, for example, your challenge is about setting boundaries, but the people in your family actually want you to set those boundaries. So often I think we have perceptions that relate to our kind of needs rather than the kind of what's really happening for other people. I'm just checking. I've just got an internet buzz there. You still hearing me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So does anybody want to add to that before I move on? I'm just going to share my screen, so feel free to add to that, and then I'll share my screen as we go. Okay, so what you should see now is, let me see if I can get rid of this thing here. Okay, so let's see if I can move this. Yes. All right, what you should see is just a bit of a slide which says working well remotely. Does everybody see that?
No, not yet.
Not yet?
It hasn't come through to me.
Okay. It's telling me that I'm sharing, so.
Yeah, it's saying you have started screen sharing.
Okay.
All right, we can see it now.
You can see it now. Great. All right. So one of the things that I thought we might very quickly talk about is motivation. So sometimes when we're thinking about all of these issues, and particularly when we're thinking about solutions to all of these issues, for me, I've got a bit of a bias in this because I actually see the world in this way, but my passion is to always leverage motivation, because when we leverage motivation, particularly when we're talking about people and people systems, we're going with the flow instead of against the flow. And so I'm going to talk about motivation and then link back some of the things we can do for working well remotely back to our motivation and perhaps our team and clients' motivation. Before I do that, what's your thoughts about that? Do you agree that motivation might be something that might be important when looking at this? Or maybe you've got a different view of that.
I think it's sort of turned everything on its head. We have to look at motivation and how we can motivate in this kind of environment now. And I think some people more than others find this challenging because often we're so used to doing the face-to-face, and that's how we engage and motivate. And now having to think a little bit differently. How can we motivate through the current environment? And what works well for some team members may not work well for others as well.
Exactly. That's
so that
right.
becomes even more challenging.
And Josephine, I like the motivation as a starting point, because for me, working from home, the greatest motivation for me is I can be with my dog 24/7.
And she has the most adorable dog.
Yeah, but so she used to be like home alone for 8 to 9 hours, and that worries me. So now I actually feel less worried because I can be with her and I can spend the whole day with her, and she's my excuse for going out. Just getting a little bit frustrated that the too many walks a day now, because that's how I break up my day, by walking. So that, from a well-being perspective, she has given me a lot of that. Like mentally, she has helped me so much by having her with me working at home.
Yeah, I think pets are wonderful for that. They really bring us back to the present too. So Shu, would you say that's your transition out of a work day back into a home day?
Yeah, she's my reason for transition.
Yeah. And what about you, Lois? How does motivation relate? Because you've been working from home for 3 years. Have you thought about what motivates you and others? And is it different now, or will it be the same, do you think?
I think the motivation is working from home. The best thing of working from home is you can have a more flexible working hours. You don't have to stick at the office like from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I can actually write on my own schedule to work. Like after I work for an hour, I can maybe get up and have a walk at home, looking after my plants, and then I can get back to work. I think this is the best thing that can motivate me to working from home.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right, well, what I want to do is just cover some motivational needs. And then what I want to do is look at some weekly rituals that we can do against some of those motivational needs. And to Beulah's point, not everyone is the same. So what motivates me and what my motivational needs are will be different to what motivates you or my team or my clients or my colleagues. So it's important to look at this from all angles so that you're not just biasing what you're doing, particularly when you're working with a team and with others and with clients, towards just something that works for you. So that's why we're going to look at all of those things. So let me look at we'll look at these really quickly. Okay, so what motivates you and your team? And Beulah will know this because we did a lot of research on this as a topic. But basically, there are you can look at, sometimes when we look at motivation and productivity, particularly, people focus on goals. So you've got to have goals. So Andrew, rightly so, you were saying, you know, there are 6 things he does in a day and he wants to get them done. So there are goals around that. And sometimes we set goals for ourselves and we achieve them, and we can't understand why others aren't achieving their goals. If they're the same goals that we have perhaps, or we can achieve them, why can't they? The reason might be is that they have different motivational needs. So those goals are not structured in a way that meets their motivational needs. So if we understand what the motivational needs are, then we can actually structure some of the activity around helping ourselves and others engage in this virtual environment. And so let me take you to what they are. The first one is really it relates to our sense of autonomy. Actually, what I might just make that smaller. Yeah. So we as people have a very strong desire to self-organize our own experience and our behaviors around activity that aligns to our sense of self. So you can feel this sometimes when someone gives you a suggestion, and it's not really a suggestion that works for you, How do you feel about that? You might feel a bit of discomfort, or you might actually maybe even agree with the suggestion, but you know you're not going to be able to implement it because it's not you. So that's because we actually need to, some of us have a very strong motivational need to kind of do it our way. So when we're thinking about what engages our team, and maybe something that might engage you too as an individual, or what engages your clients more, what we need to do is make sure we're providing choice, encourage initiative, so encourage others to participate, to give their input, to give their ideas. And what we also want to do is make sure that any feedback we give is informational rather than controlling. And what that means is that if we're giving feedback, we're not giving feedback in a directive way. The feedback is still open. It's still very curious about what that experience was like for that person, or how that person might think about that strategy. So it's not a direction, it's not a directive. So autonomy is actually quite an important motivational need. The next one, the B, is a sense of belonging. And we have a really strong desire to feel that and to have a higher purpose sometimes. And so this can be very proximal. So it can be about my belonging to a family or my own community, or it could be quite distant in terms of I feel like I belong to a cause or a sense of purpose. And I'll give you an example. I'm part of I'm in a team at Orica, and my colleagues are a global HR support team. And this week we had the vice president got us into a meeting, and she talked to us. We had a brainstorming activity. She talked to us about her need to create meaning and maybe do something more in relation to assisting that global pandemic cause. So when you think about it, you know, that team, they're all still working. They're being supported by their organisation. Everybody's working from home. Nobody's been asked to do less work. So from a kind of a financial point of view, everybody's very supported. But what she recognised is that she has a strong sense and need for belonging, and so does her team. So what we did is we had an hour conversation, and we brainstormed how Orica could contribute to maybe other organisations around the world who are really helping disadvantaged groups. And we heard from people, because there's people on the call all over the world. So we heard from people from Philippines who were saying that they need help in terms of you know, medical supplies. We heard from people in India who were, if you're not on, we're just getting a bit of background noise. If just go on mute if you're, yeah, thank you. We heard from people in India who were suggesting that there's a black market being conducted around face masks, for example. And we heard from people, for example, in Western Australia, who were talking about the need to support Indigenous communities and make sure that we're still allowing fly-in, fly-out workers to access those communities, because the communities really rely on outreach and from people, but that we need really strong protocols, and how could the company help. And we also talked about maybe the company could use, because they manufacture chemicals, so use some of the downtime in the demand to manufacture chemicals that can be used for sanitizing or sanitizers. So that conversation was incredible. You can imagine, right? I wasn't expecting that conversation, but once we were in it, I knew exactly why our vice president had formed that discussion. And in that discussion, she didn't tell us what she thought we could do. She asked the global community for ideas about what they could do. And then suddenly, even after the call, everybody's sharing links about how they can volunteer. And and we're going to come up with a plan to work on that together. So suddenly, that group of people who don't really know each other very well, because it's a global team, are banded together in a sense of identity and belonging, because they have a common purpose, which is meaningful at this time. So that's an example of how she really tapped into this need. And it's not a I mean, it's sort of work related, but it's not. You know, this is not about doing things from an engagement point of view that's just related to work. This is really about tapping into people's sort of sense of belonging as a human being. All right.
Josie, I've got a question on just on the autonomy and belonging component of it. What about an individual who's far more focused on self-driven goals, achieving ambitions, those sorts of things, as opposed to being part of a team?
Yes.
What's your take on that sort of scenario?
Yeah. So then it's about linking to that. So what I think that's saying is that this person has the seeds. Their driver is more around competency and really feeling like they're feeling capable and confident in their environment, and they want opportunities to use their skills. So in my example before, that's the kind of person who you might ask not to really be involved in perhaps even getting something like that started, but thinking about how they could use their special skills to really help that group achieve that goal. So it's more about really, and then obviously recognizing them as the person who is contributing that skill. Have I answered your question though, Beulah?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, and I think so, because what I'm kind of, I guess, speculating is that maybe that person wouldn't, you know, is maybe sometimes you have people in your team who just don't want to play a part. They don't want to be involved, and that's fine. You've got to kind of hook into what the motivational need is for them, and then allow them to have that opportunity. Or maybe it's not that opportunity; it's another opportunity. So if we go into our weekly rituals, let's look at how some of these rituals can relate to engagement and productivity. And both of these areas can relate back to motivational needs. So in terms of when you're thinking about productivity, both of those and engagement, we can think about how would we brainstorm some weekly rituals that we can put in place that help us increase both. So when we're thinking about productivity, we definitely want to focus on planning and sharing goals and achievement. That in itself, for example, Beulah, might be enough to increase the engagement of that person who likes to achieve things. What we want to do here in terms of quick wins is make sure that we do have weekly priorities. And what I mean by that, it's not just for ourselves. If we're working with others, let's actually share that with the team. Let's actually make sure that it's a visual display and that you're having some kind of check-in around weekly priorities. So particularly for leaders, it's important. But also if you're working with clients, sometimes you can do that for clients as well. You can help them with their priorities, particularly if you're in the role of an advisor. Time blocking is really important for work and play. So using your diary, making it transparent, maybe establishing a diary for the team as well if you're working with a team, and block out time that people will actually be working on different things. One of the things I think that works really well here is actually having sprints. So what we mean by sprints is where you commit to doing only one thing for the next time period. It might be 20 minutes or half an hour. Don't go any further than that. And for the next 20 minutes, commit to doing one task. So Christy, you were talking a bit about how do you prioritize around the things that maybe, you know, you really need to get done, but are maybe more difficult, or you don't do them first because they're not those things that are easy to do. Time block those, make them the start of your day. So the start of the day, handle the most difficult task, do it for 20 minutes. Anybody can commit to doing something for 20 minutes. Give yourself a reward at the end of that 20 minutes. Now, as a team, so Annabelle, I know you're working in a team, you could have sprints with your team where you start out in the morning and maybe it's 9 or 9:30 and you have a really quick chat where you go, okay, what's your goal for the next 20 minutes? Bang, bang, bang. Right, we're gonna just check in 20 minutes and you can rate each other on, you can rate yourself on 1 to 10. 1, I didn't achieve it. 10, I smashed it. So very quick check-ins, and you can see that that mirrors the social engagement that we would normally be doing if we were actually face-to-face or working in the same environment. Because when you think about it, when you work in the same environment, you talk about some things you've achieved along the way in your day, whereas when we're all working from home, we're not getting that opportunity. So having those sprints is really important. And I'm suggesting 20 minutes. It might be longer, it might be shorter, it doesn't really matter. Those sprints will actually get you going for the rest of the, because what you'll find is that you commit to 20 minutes and you end up working on that for an hour. And so that's a really important technique. Another technique, obviously, which is incorporated into that, is to review, reflect, and recognize. So as we're doing those, as we're achieving those weekly priorities, make sure that you're having a reflection session. If you work with a team, it's really important to do it as a team. If you're working on your own, it's really important to do it as an individual too. And for those of you that work perhaps on your own, how often do you reflect with your clients? So how often do you ask for feedback or just reflect with them? And when I think sometimes we don't want to burden our clients, and obviously it's difficult to get feedback from clients, but you can use the opportunities when you're talking to them anyway, or they're engaging with you anyway, just in the last 5 minutes to say, hey, how are you going? Do you want to, you know, how did that go for you? Or even, how have I gone for the last month in helping you or in supporting you? What can I do differently? So there's always opportunities to really just include those reflection type questions. And, you know, if you're doing work sprints too, maybe you could do that with your clients as well. Just because when you do a work sprint, by the way, you don't have to be working on the same goal. You could do it with 50 people and everybody's working on a different goal. They're just committing to something. Doesn't have to be committing to the same thing. Any questions about that? Okay, so all of this, by the way, really keep it simple. So there are really simple tools to help plan the week. And I would suggest using some of the visual tools so that you can create a board or some kind of online board which actually goes through what's on your backlog, what are you doing right now, and what's done. Celebrating the what's done is really important. Okay, so that's productivity. Let's go to engagement. So we know that social interaction is important for making us feel happier. I was actually reflecting on this last night because there's a smile that I know I get when I'm in a social environment, and that's the thing that I'm missing the most right now, because I'm not smiling like that enough, because I'm on my own more than I'm normally used to. That smile, that social interaction, and I'm an extrovert. I'm 99% on the continuum of extroversion, so I'm a little bit off the scale, but that's kind of what I'm missing. So how do you replicate that in a virtual environment? First thing, think about how people have access to information. How are you sharing information about what you're, not just what you're working on, but what you're doing during the day, how you're feeling about what's happening during the day. So some of this is about, it's related to productivity when we talk about, you know, where we store files and do we have documents that we can work on together, etc. But what I mean by access to information here is more about where will people get information that relates to your social engagement with them. And I think Alice was talking about before the fact that because he's not having face-to-face interactions with clients, he's feeling like he's missing something. So what he needs to think about is, what are the things he would normally share in those face-to-face environments, and how can he give people access to that in a way that he's comfortable with? How can he give that to clients? So maybe, for example, it's about creating some kind of social platform with your clients or your team. Maybe it's about sharing some stories about your day in a different way, in terms of opening up and being a little bit more vulnerable. The reason why this is hard in a virtual space is it because it requires us to be a little bit more vulnerable than we'd normally be. Because we need to one of the two things I'll say here is you need to over communicate, so you're going to feel like it's over communication, and you need to break some barriers in terms of the boundary between your professional self and your personal self. So think about that. What kind of information could you share? What don't you know about the people you work with? What kind of, it's all those things that we really love about social interactions, because we know more about each other from a social perspective. The other thing is, in terms of engagement, regular check-ins are important. So I know some of you were talking about the fact that you feel like you're in more meetings right now than you ever have been. Absolutely. I think that's something that we have to live with. I think we also have to think about that as work. So regular check-ins means that we won't be able to spend the time during the day on the aspects that we think of are productive. So it may mean that you need longer to achieve certain goals because there are more check-ins. I think that's just the reality of where we're at the moment. I don't think you can compromise on the check-ins, because then you're compromising on what you can. You're really going to compromise on the engagement of the team, but also it'll affect productivity. So I think regular check-ins are important. And then lastly, remember to play. So competitions with your staff or your clients or colleagues. Someone told me about a game that people have been playing called Psych. Has anybody heard of that? No, I think it's one of those trivia games, but apparently it's hilarious. So think about, there will be lots of apps that kind of help you input play, but play could also be, I'll give you an example. I was on a call the other day, and the presenter wanted us to really encourage us to show video, because some of the people that I work with are not used to being on video. And so he said, oh, I forgot to tell you, he got everybody to go on video, and then he said, I forgot to tell you, we've got a prize for the best background, and I'm the one that's going to decide. So through the whole meeting, we're all looking at each other's backgrounds and sort of, thinking about, who's going to win. And then obviously someone won. No prize, of course, but you don't need it. It's just playful. So thinking about those kind of things, I just thought that was stellar. I really loved that. Okay, so that's kind of the framework. And then what we need to do is really do some brainstorming around this. And I'm going to give you this at the end of today, so you can kind of go and think about things. And also, I'm really happy to have a discussion with you if there's some ideas you want to kind of have a chat about and brainstorm. So autonomy, we talked about this before. Focus on their interests. If you don't know what people are interested in, then you can't link your kind of engagement activity or your goals for your team to their interests. So you really need, something's going on here. You really need to focus on their interests and ask, and really keep those questions very open in terms of, so, as professionals, we might have some weekly priorities, but where can you actually ask your team to flex on how those priorities are actually going to be created? Make sure that, and again, we're all working flexibly, make sure people have a lot of flexibility in terms of when they can be their most productive self. Belonging. So focus on people's feelings. So this is just we talked about this. Encourage non-work related interactions and connect people in a common purpose. So what are things that you could do around that? And then competency. You want to master skills. You want to learn. This is a motivational need that says, I want to learn. I want to feel great about having really mastered a skill or a capability. So you need to focus on people's capability. Talk about development. One of the things that really sometimes we forget about, particularly in terms of engagement with teams, but even ourselves, because right now we talked about the fact that many of us have a uptake in workload, where is the room for development? Some people will be and you might be very motivated because you have an opportunity to learn something, but sometimes that does take time. So you want to make sure that those goals are included in the weekly priority. Maybe that's a way of rewarding yourself after a sprint. You do a sprint and then you go and learn something, if that's particularly something that you really care about. So you've got to work on your own motivation and then think about what will really increase the motivation of others as well. This is particularly important to encourage learning and encourage sharing. So you don't, as a leader or as the person supporting your clients, you can learn from them. And that's not something that you should be shy about asking about, because other people love to share, particularly if they have a need around competency. They love to share what they know. So provide an opportunity for that. Okay, so what I've got, and I'm going to leave you with this, I'll email you and I'll put it in the meetup group, is a bit of a worksheet. So this is your homework. Think about the motivational need. Think about the ritual or routine in the week that you can actually put against that motivational need. And this is the kind of impact that you can expect. So I'll leave you with that. I know we've kind of run out of time. So, but that's kind of what I'll leave you with. And as I said, I'm really happy to do a sprint with you on this, because I know you're going to leave here today and you may not go back to it. So if you want to do a sprint on this, you can always email me or call me, and email me at josephine@higherspaces.com.au and say, at this time I'm going to spend half an hour or 20 minutes working out this plan, this motivational plan, or this engagement plan for me, or it might be for my team. All right, well, that was a bit of a whirlwind hour. It went really quickly. Can I just go, just if you need to go, that's fine. I just want to take another minute and just hear from everyone about what's the biggest takeaway that they've got from the last hour. Perhaps if I go with Beulah first.
I mean, some of the things that you've talked about, we've discussed previously. But I think what is new for me is having recognized the need for me to focus on myself a bit more. And what, this worksheet I think would be a great activity for me to actually think about what I need to do and how I can set things up differently, rather than thinking about the needs of my team as much as I do at the moment. So I think for me that would be a big challenge, but a good challenge as well. I've done the sprinting with a friend. I buddy up with someone. I'm doing my PhD and it's extremely boring. And so I buddied up with someone, and that really, really does work.
Great.
It's been a lifesaver to actually go through looking at data, for example, which is so mind-numbing for me. But buddying up with other people to actually have some goals and a set time, that's worked wonders.
Fantastic. Thanks, Beulah. What about you, Lois?
I like the presentation. Great conversation. Especially I like the part you talk about the engagement. I will start to think about what kind of games that I can play with my team. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And Lois, if you've got any that you come across that are great, please share them with us. So I'm sure we would love to and what I'll do is I'll try to get the link for Psych as well. I'll put that, I'll share that with you all. What about you, Andrew?
Just unmuting myself. Is that right? You can hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
I don't know why I'm in the black at the moment, but anyway, I'll have to see if I can work that out. The main thing is that everybody is, in a similar situation. We're all sort of isolated, and we're not the only one. And sometimes you might think you're a bit alone and all that type of thing. But these sorts of things are pretty good. These little get-togethers are quite good to just see that other people are having the same sort of feelings and going through the same sort of, ups and downs from time to time. So you're not on your own, and that's why these sort of things are good. I think that's the main thing for me.
Yeah, great. All right. And last, Shu and Christy.
I like the bit about engagement, Josephine, around and what you call access to information, but that's also two-way. It's a bit of sharing and learning.
Yeah.
It's a form of engagement, because I've benefited quite a lot. For example, I'm not sure if Alice is still on a call. He'll send us information about some of the financial business support that we can be aware of. So he's sharing a lot of that as we, went through this the COVID, and what business support we're getting from the government, whether we're eligible to apply for it. So there's a lot of that sharing that he's, providing, and that created a sense of engagement with Alice that is just strengthening that engagement. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking what I can share back to the community for what I know that could be useful for the people now.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I think
true.
that's a really good way to your point, that belonging, it connects to that, because you're giving back to the community. You're sort of, I think that's a really good trigger there when you talk about engagement.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Christy?
I think over communicating, you said, is really important, because there's oftentimes, even with you and Shu, I think I'll drop something down and I'd read it and I was like, oh my gosh, they don't know what this means at all. So I have to like find myself kind of filtering more about giving more information, because I mean, that's just the way it is, I guess, just to communicate. And I also feel like in this time that we get more time together as well. I think just in our team as well. So for us, I guess it kind of flipped around. We just have more time for this kind of communication.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the sprinting. I used to actually do sprints, and I didn't. I don't know why I stopped doing them, I guess. So that was really good. It brought that back into my radar to just do it again. So yeah, I'm excited actually. After this, I'll try to sprint.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll stop there. We're having weekly events, so keep up with the meetup group, and then and if you've got any ideas or any requests, happy to organize some topics that relate to what you would like to share as well. So thanks, everyone. Have a beautiful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank
Tomorrow.
you.
Bye.
Good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, we have a social tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Christy just
Yeah. So we're gonna try to play a game, like Pictionary or Category.
Awesome. Okay.
So if you guys
4
could
o'clock?
come in to just have some fun, that would be helpful
Okay.
too.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Christy.
you.
Bye.
So thanks everyone.
See you, B. Bye.